Hello and welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, May 2nd, and we have a great show for you today. We have the final interview of townwide candidates in competitive races. Today's guest is Jesse Hefter. We're going to get to him in a minute, but I want to remind you that we have been interviewing every candidate in a townwide competitive race going back months. We started with Housing Authority, then we went to Select Board. Now we're in School Committee. Jesse is the last candidate. The election, of course, is Tuesday, May 7th. Polls are open 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. Your polling location can be found at wheredoivotema.com. Strangely enough, it's the Secretary of State's website, but there it is. And you got to get out and vote. You can vote early at Town Hall, at the Coolidge Corner Library, and at Putterham Library. Certain hours, which I'm not going to belabor here. You can vote on Election Day. You can also, if you have received a vote by mail, you can bring that into a drop box at any of those three locations, 24 hours a day. They're under camera. They're under protection. Town Hall, Coolidge Corner Library, Putterham Library. And then that evening, Tuesday, May 7th, you can put your channel on right here, Brookline Interactive Group, and you can watch the results. We're going to have the results show starting at 7. Results don't come in until a little after 8 because the polls are open until 8. And watch the results. Without any further ado, though, you just caught a sneak peek of him a second ago. Jesse Hefter, candidate for school committee. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tommy. I appreciate your willingness to meet with me and the opportunity to share some things about myself and my candidacy with you.
Jesse, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to spend some time with us. I know the campaign is really busy. Now, a lot of my viewers, I'm sure, are already familiar with you, but maybe some are not. So why don't you tell us, what have you been doing your whole life?
So yeah, very briefly, Tommy, thank you. So I'm a native of New Jersey, graduated the public schools there, and then moved to northeastern Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, where I attended high school. Unfortunately, 1972, when I graduated high school, that was the same year that Tropical Storm Agnes flooded our entire community. We were very involved in sandbagging at the Susquehanna River. Unfortunately, our efforts as a community failed to hold back the waters, and we lost everything. And then I left to go to New York and Connecticut to college, finished a degree in chemistry, and then went to Case Western Reserve in Cleveland for a PhD. Best part of getting my PhD in chemistry was that at Case I met my future wife, who was doing a degree in special education and hails from Boston. And so I finished my PhD, we got married, went to Shell Oil Company in Houston, where I was a research chemist for a couple of years, but then returned here to Boston and worked here for a company called GTE Laboratories, which morphed into Verizon around 25 years ago. My wife and I have been now back in Brookline for 40 years. Brenda's, as I said, special educator, still working 40 years later too. She grew up here, went through the public school systems, Runkle and BHS. We raised our 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son here. And amongst our grandchildren, 2 of our younger ones are actually in Roland Hayes School in the 4th grade. They're twins. My career in Verizon had a lot of pieces to it, maybe 8 or 10 careers, material scientists, quality process manager, software design, data analytics, data warehousing, logistics, training of technicians, and all kinds of things. I was fortunate to be able to retire after the 35 years, 5 years ago in 2019, and became more civically engaged, having some more time. And in 2019, I volunteered to be part of a select board committee called the Pedestrian Friendly Street Lighting Committee. And the point there was to find better ways of lighting our sidewalks, and as well our bicycle lanes that are along the sidewalks with better street lighting in the evenings. Became then a town meeting member in my precinct, which is precinct 14, 2 years ago. Now I have 1 more year before I'm up for re-election. As a outgrowth of some of my work in town meeting, I interviewed for a position on the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, that reports to the Transportation Board, and I'm an active member of that committee. As a result of an article in town meeting 2 years ago, I also volunteered for a moderators committee on PFAS, on these fluorinated chemicals that are sort of in the news everywhere now. And we worked successfully as a team of town meeting members to address some issues in the town of Brookline with reducing exposure to our citizens. And I'll just finish by saying that all throughout my corporate career, my years as a community volunteer in all different kinds of community organizations give me, sort of are an indication of my ability to work well with all kinds of people.
So there was a lot of stuff there. You've led a full experience thus far. There were a few clues maybe about why you're running for a school committee, but some of the things that, other school committee members may bring, sort of that, hit you over the head with a hammer about education experience. You were in school a long time, you got a PhD, but why school committee and why now? And geez, what are you thinking?
Right. So it's a funny thing because some people say, if you're fortunate enough to be elected or if you're unfortunate enough to be elected. I'm certainly very excited about it. And when I put my my view towards getting something done, I do have a string of some tenacity within my DNA that strives to reach the goals that I set for myself and for teams that I'm on. In my case, I think it came out of the following situation. Back in October, of course, our world was gripped by the October 7th incident in Israel. Soon afterwards, I was approached by a fairly large group of parents, both Israeli parents and American Jewish parents from the community, who were very concerned about issues facing the schools in light of then seats being available on the school committee. One of the things they asked me about was, we think you'd be, as a community leader within the Jewish community, an important addition to the school committee to look at issues, of course, about school culture. However, as I thought about it, Tommy, and it took some time to think about it, as you say, it's a very big investment of time as a volunteer. I began to talk to a lot of parents outside that group, and I found that there were some other themes that came before me that had nothing to do with the school culture issue, but had issues to do with academic rigor, had to do with communication and collaboration, two other areas of my strong points, had to do with mental health, and issues about social emotional wellness, issues about special education. And so what began to happen for me is I sort of saw, school culture is one piece of something very large. There are many opportunities for improvement, discussion, policy development, interactions with the school that all seem to fall into place for me in terms of my academic background, my team player background, my consensus building background. And as a result of that, if I'm able to work successfully with the school committee, if elected, to work additionally on school culture improvement, that would be amazing. So in all, it started from sort of one side, but as I spoke to people around the community, I discovered that there were other pieces that fit in very well with my background and interests.
So you kind of touched on linking your professional experiences to the job, which I think is great. And obviously with 9 school committee members, a diversity of experience and background may be just what the voters ask for and what the voters seek. It has been the tradition. What other qualifications are you bringing? What other skill sets are you bringing to the job?
So one of the things that I did in my corporate career was sort of came out of the beginning of the development of what we've heard about in Brookline, but hasn't happened yet, which is FiOS. So FiOS, the fiber optic system that Verizon put in around the United States, made it to some places in Massachusetts. It's in Boston, it's in Newton, hasn't made it to Brookline. The reason I say FiOS in general, though, is that when we started that project around the year 2000, we also needed to build the customer care facilities nationwide to support all the customers that would be calling for installation and support. As well, we needed to train all of our field technicians, and there are about 12 to 15,000 field technicians across the United States who needed to be retrained on how to handle this kind of cutting-edge technology installation in your home or apartment or building, as well as support if they went back because there was a problem. And so I was asked to begin to work on doing both, building with teams across the country the infrastructure for caring for our customers nationwide from day one, as well as to build the care infrastructure that would enable our customers to get the high quality, rapid support over the phone, and then if necessary by a visit, to be as efficient and economical in getting people back up to speed. At the same time, I was writing training material based on my technical background and translating it into material that could be provided to technicians across the country. What one of the vice presidents of the company did, though, was say, Jesse, we want you to go out to the field and we want you to do the initial training. And we'll take videotapes of you training technicians in the field and in garages around the United States, which did happen, and then send that around. Okay, it sounds old style now, but this was 20 years ago. We'll make DVDs and we'll send them nationwide, which they did. And so I trained trainers, but my materials that I put together became sort of the bedrock training for technicians around the country. That's just one example of sort of taking the technical side, making it human, interacting with thousands of field technicians, 20 to 30 to 40 at a time, day in and day out on the road over multiple years in order to get the message out, around the United States that way. So it was building small teams that were functional and successful. It was creating a consensus and a sense of trust in those rooms with the union field technicians that we were on the level and that we were providing information that would be useful and helpful. It wasn't an us and them. To get them to critically think about how to solve an issue, say with internet speed or pixelation of a video picture on your screen, and to be as inclusive, as respectful, as diligent as possible in listening to their needs and sharing the information with them. And so those are some of the kinds of skills, just one tiny slice of some of my background that I think fits in really well with some of the challenges we have to move the needle forward, to move, to progress and turn the wheels in terms of the school committee challenges as well.
So I want to get into some of those challenges or some of those conversations or some of those priorities. We've heard conversation actually quite recently about de-leveling and about academic rigor. We've also heard conversations about social and emotional wellness. And there are ways in which those things are totally unrelated. There may be some ways in which they are connected. Are you ready to jump into that conversation?
Absolutely. And so on the subject of de-leveling, I'm extremely optimistic that as a school community and as a community of Brookline, that we can meet every student where they are from the moment they enter the doors of our buildings. And what I mean by that is that if there are students, whether they're in certain groups within the community, whether they're in marginalized groups or whether they're in other kinds of groupings in which we've seen disparities in their ability to achieve or opportunities provided to them, our responsibility as residents of Brookline and certainly our responsibilities as members of the school committee and the entire school community needs to address those issues as soon as we recognize them. That would be if it's literacy, which we know 36% of our K through 3 do not meet literacy requirements at the end of 3rd grade, based on recent information. And so we need to meet those issues in terms of careful assessment, evaluation, and intervention at whatever age or level students are finding themselves challenged, whether it's math and science. Whenever we recognize that there is a challenge in a student, we need to meet that challenge where it is found. And so it requires, I think, a little bit of a shift in thinking in terms of teachers in the classroom looking for additional support in order to address those issues and not simply to perhaps move certain students, for special needs or other things, rather than getting direct teaching help in the classroom. I think that by the time students get to ninth grade, there should be no surprises that students leaving eighth grade, matriculating into ninth grade, should be able to move into the sections that are provided, whether it's called college prep, then honors, in a way that works for them. And so the de-leveling conversation for me was was presented, at least at the school committee meetings and by the district, as an opportunity to improve the possibilities and opportunities for Black and brown students that disproportionately were seen to be held back. I would like to see us not even look at it that way, to look at our education of all our students in the way of addressing and advocating for every single student at every school from the time they enter our system.
So as you know, maybe some of our viewers know, the school committee doesn't decide how much money it gets to spend, but it does decide how to spend it, right? So town meeting essentially, along with state government and a few other places, write the school committee a check. And then the school committee figures out what bills to pay and how to pay them. And most of that is personnel, right? Most of that is labor, but not all of it.
Right.
And we are always going to have pressures in Brookline on the budget because there's no limit to the ideas on great new programs folks come up with and are willing to invest money in. But of course, the school committee has a finite amount of money. So there's been a little bit of budget pressure now. In fact, just a year after an operating override. Can you give folks a little flavor for that and how you see a Jesse Hefter school committee navigating through it?
Yes, thanks, Tommy. That's a great question. So the way that it's been explained to me, the way I've seen it for this year in terms of fiscal year 25, the town and the schools are sharing the same public pot of money. That's not changing anytime soon. And so there is an allocation provided to the school district by the town, and that amount of money is generally a fixed amount, and the school is then asked to respond with meeting that allocated amount. Excuse me. What happened this year is that the school budget, and as it has perhaps in other years as well, came in a little bit higher than the allocation that the town provided to the school district. And as a result, the school district was asked to find ways, a prioritized set of items that might have to be removed or reduced in scope financially in order to meet the goal, because there isn't extra money around. You know, I kid to people sometimes when we talk about this on the street or in a meet and greet, that there's a limit to how much we can send everybody out to sell Girl Scout cookies to bring in revenue. It would require too many Girl Scout cookies, although, I love them personally, but and we support them, but we can't go into the sell the Girl Scout things to bring all the revenue in we need. And so we do have to make tough decisions, and we do need to look at programs, and we need to look everywhere within the school budget. And so I guess two things I would say to hit an answer to what you had mentioned is, number one, we need to look everywhere. We need to look within school administration. We need to look within staffing. We need to look within programs at what things are costing. I was in a position in Verizon over the years, as well as in a nonprofit that I run for the community, to handle budgets on a very regular basis, both small, in the $100,000 to $250,000 to the $10 to $200 million, in Verizon. And so I do have a critical way of looking at budgets. I'm a data-driven person, both in terms of evidence-based decision-making, as well as the work I did in the last couple of years in Verizon in data warehousing, data analytics, and building smart and visualized reports that enable us to understand trends and behaviors and to alert us when things are moving out. And so one opportunity I think I might have is to get a little more detail about the individual elements within the budget. I know that there was an article recently written about trying to get some more detail about the FTEs that are associated with the budget dollars per line item for different functions within the school district. That would be an important advance for us. more transparency into all the elements of the budget, and then hopefully the ability within the school committee to work with my peers to develop a more detailed understanding of all the pieces to the budget at their elemental level, so that when it comes back up to the level that the town and that residents and that parents see, we have clear understandings of where they came from and can make the best decisions about how to utilize the money in the most cost-effective way possible.
I want to shift gears a little bit. I see you have a stand up to Jewish hate button on your lapel, and I've seen it on your lapel before. I've got to imagine that you're imagining a connection between your statement on your lapel and school culture in Brookline in 2024 and beyond. Bring it together for us.
I think that every single student needs to be educated within the schools within a safe and nurturing environment. Even our seniors, Tommy, are kids. You know, their brains don't fully develop until, I don't know, 25, 28. You see a lot of behavior, right? And so we know from cognitive science that brains don't develop until the mid-20s till they're like fully matured. And so I would imagine that even seniors at Brookline High School, given the kinds of events that happened, things that were said, both by students, faculty, administration, or lack of things that were said, were hurtful and put people into uncomfortable situations, whether you're in the Muslim community, the Muslim Palestinian community, certainly within the Jewish community, given the significant tragedy that occurred and that's continuing to occur in the Middle East. And so I'd like to be able to work with the school committee on finalizing a policy about hate speech. We have one for bullying, one for harassment, one for discrimination. Those are state-regulated requirements for any district in Massachusetts. What we do not have yet, but it's being worked on, is a hate speech policy. And that needs to be, again, across the board. There is no student that should come into our community in the schools that should feel slighted, discriminated against. Speech that we know hurts should not be directed at them, or should be spoken about where they just happen to overhear it if it's not directed at them. It needs to be a safe environment. It needs to be an environment where students are not uncomfortable in school. And it needs to be an environment where, if you're learning history, of course there'll be politics that'll be mentioned, and there'll be ideologies presented that hopefully can be meaningfully and respectfully discussed in a way that doesn't scare, frustrate, or hurt other people within the classroom or school community. But outside of that, students need to feel comfortable in school. They need to be comfortable in the community. And then I'm hoping that I can be a moderate force for positive change in this particular space.
Certainly complex. And of course, it's also a workspace. So this also relates to teachers, educators, and administrators as well. They're entitled to some safety and some sanity in their workspace. Tell us some stuff about you that we might not know. Give us the curveball.
Sure. Okay. So I love hobbies. So from the time I was a little kid, my dad always had me help out with tools or help out with gardening or help out with things with music. I play piano as well. From my earliest childhood, I can remember tinkering around with, which are still sold, these balsa tissue rubber-powered aircraft, small airplanes that morphed into boats and then morphed into cars. Later, remote control, meaning radio-controlled models and all kinds of different sports. And during COVID, actually, I was able to build up a little bit of a workshop to support my interest in carpentry and woodworking. And so I've built all kinds of, big and large projects, done a lot of things around the house as well, but also I love crafting things. And I think part of it is a release in terms of doing something very creative, with my hands and head. There's something to be said. You do a lot of budget work as well, Tommy. So there's something to be said with, measuring 3 times, cutting once. And so I think the adage that's used in woodworking is about the same, measure 2 or 3 times before you cut. It says a lot about critical thinking, about being careful, being balanced, taking your time, and then making a decision. Just as I was taught by my parents these things, I passed some of these hobbies and interests on to my kids and down to my grandchildren. Um, I also love to sail. I've had the opportunity over my life to both teach sailing when I was a camp counselor in Pennsylvania, a place called Harvey's Lake in northeastern Pennsylvania. And over many summers, I did that after high school and college. And up until a couple of years ago, still sailed boats up in this area as well when I get the opportunity. And for a little exercise, I love skiing in the winter when there's snow, and biking as well around Brookline and all kinds of other parts on the bike paths, and enjoy getting out to play some tennis too when I have a spare hour during the week or two.
Now, how's the campaign going? Right, there's another set of exercises for you, mental and physical, for sure. How have you
Yes.
found campaigning townwide? Something I think is new to you, at least in Brookline.
Yes. So town-wide campaign was, I think, a lot more work than I thought it was going to be in terms of my expectation, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I think some of the best parts of it have been meeting new people around town in every corner of Brookline. My wife Brenda kids to me like we've never been to South Brookline so many times, but I mean, we've been all over planting, close to 200 yard signs. We've been in meetings everywhere. One of the things that I find frustrating is that, meet and greets can't go on for like, till the wee hours of the morning because people are so engaged around town. I've met hundreds of people and their ideas and their passion. I mean, a lot of people, of course, all of us have gone through schools, and so they have their own opinions about many of the issues with schools. Yesterday, spoke to someone on the topic of vocational education in the Brookline Public Schools. We had a lovely discussion about that as well. And there is just so much interest from many people about having their voice heard if I'm elected, so that they can bring maybe some of their background, talent, wisdom, passion, ideas to help improve our town. And so there's the fundraising part, and that doesn't stop. And I had to learn, as you and I spoke a couple of months ago, I had to learn how to ask people. And we've been blessed by being able to raise some money, which has been very helpful in the campaign. But the best part about it really has been the social interaction with people, feeding on that energy. It's around the clock, 6 days a week. I'm out there campaigning, and I'm hoping that people who want to learn more about my campaign, it's at jesseforbrookline.com. We have ways of getting involved in terms of working at the polls next Tuesday, getting yard signs, sending out your friend cards, adding endorsements. Still more are coming in. I'm so thankful to the people who are lining up with me, and my experience with the campaign has been very, very positive, very positive.
Well, folks, the election is just 5 days away. There are 4 school committee candidates on the ballot. 3 will be elected to the school committee. So you've got some choices to make. You've got some choices to make for select board, for housing authority, and quite likely, depending on your precinct, for town meeting. You've got a few days left to make those choices. You can go to the town website. You can do a little research on what your ballot looks like, find some candidates you like, show up ready. Tuesday, May 7th, polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and beginning at 7 p.m. on May 7th, right here on Brookline Interactive Group, is the results show. Jesse, thank you so much for coming on the show. I wish you the best of luck this coming Tuesday. I appreciate all of your efforts. And folks, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.